What if I told you the way we move billions of dollars on the internet today is completely broken? We are losing millions of dollars to crypto bridge hacks. Our infrastructure is fragile.
I still have money personally stuck in wormhole that just never came out. That was years ago. And so you don't want to get into that environment. When it comes to your money, you have to trust a third party, almost like pirates, right? Like you have to go through vulnerabilities, which shouldn't be the case at that point. AI agents are going to be a thing, and not only are they going to be a thing, but they're going to come on chain. There's variable execution rates. Things can get stuck. But now that we've landed there, there's nobody else on the moon except for us. And so we're going to be able to reap the benefits of taking that long-term outlook. I truly think that what we've developed is one of the most consequential pieces of technology that this industry has seen in many years. I think this really changes the game.
What if I told you the way we move billions of dollars on the internet today is completely broken? We are losing millions of dollars to crypto bridge hacks. Our infrastructure is fragile. And very soon, we will have AI agents trading thousands of financial decisions on behalf of us on the internet. Are we ready for that? My guest today says no, but he is building the exact system to fix that. Ken, my guest, who has gone from turning around failing multi-million dollars restaurants and F&B in Los Angeles, has now become the co-founder and the CEO of Wire Network, a self-taught crypto pioneer, an early adopter to Bitcoin, and most importantly, a blue-collar CEO who believes in execution over anything else. Today, we're going to talk about the dark problems of crypto, the way AI is going to handle our financial decisions and transactions, and what it takes to build empire in the crypto space. Welcome to the Base Show, Ken. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Ken, I want to actually start off from your background a little bit. A lot of people come in from the top tech companies or the big companies out there, or rather they are some part of a crypto or rather some sort of tech company. You come from the traditional hospitality companies, making the failing businesses, or rather the F&Bs, turn into multi-million dollar profitable within 60 days. What's the brutal truth of these businesses that are now failing that you have eventually turned into profitable?
Well, that's actually a really good question. I mean, not a lot of people ask that question in particular. They're really focused on my finance background and everything that I've done, up until that point. But the reality is you can start a business, but you might not be a great operator. There's idea and then there's execution. And I think that is a key point where the idea person doesn't always understand finance, operations, marketing, all the other things that have to go in line for a successful business and company. And that's one of the foundational pieces that I've used along with, a lot of other disciplines that I've learned along the way to create a company like Wire Network.
I love that. And of course, I love the fact that you call yourself a blue collar CEO, because a brutal truth here as well is that a lot of these CEOs or leaders in this tech or even the crypto space haven't really built anything. They haven't really shipped anything, but rather building high narratives, vaporware, but somehow make it out there, right? How does this work ethics of yours translate into building Wire Network and the principles that you talk about?
So I'll give a shout out to my co-founder, Kyle Dolan. And the reason I'm doing that is because we actually share the same ethos. And that ethos is we actually want to solve the problem. We feel that we can execute and deliver on those big lofty goals. And so for Wire Network, the universal transaction layer, everybody had the opportunity to build this. This wasn't an unknown problem in our industry, this interoperability, this fragmentation, this siloed liquidity, these bridge vulnerabilities. Everybody in the industry knows what the problem is. It was who was going to solve it. And unfortunately, to solve it, you have to have resilience. You have to have grit. You have to have a long-term mindset, because the other option is you can just throw a Band-Aid on it or create patchwork that doesn't solve the problem for the future of this industry. And so Kyle and I decided that we are going to, we'll walk over glass for a few years, R&D, reverse engineer, everything that it took to figure out how to create a standardization framework for this industry to solve the interoperability problem, we were the two that were willing to go down that path when nobody else wanted to. And now that we've gotten there, because there was no guarantee that we were gonna get there. Like we were shooting for the moon, and like there was no guarantee that we were gonna get there. But now that we've landed there, there's nobody else on the moon except for us, and so we're going to be able to reap the benefits of taking that long term outlook, and the industry itself can now finally put a lot of these vulnerability and risk profiles to rest, and we can move forward as an industry and start being the future of finance that everyone talked about, for the last 10 years.
Absolutely. Ken, you saw the interoperability as that missing piece, but was there a specific moment that you said, this is where I need to build Wire? Was it a personal pain point where one of you got hacked, one of you lost money? What was that specific moment?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been in the industry since 2013, so no one's immune to the vulnerabilities and things that have happened.
Two times. I owe up to it.
My first one was actually Cryptsy, the exchange in 2014, where the CEO literally drained everyone's account and he fled to China to never be seen again. The reason that I even used that exchange was because it was based in Florida, and I was like, okay, US laws, regulation, and jurisdiction, like this is as safe as you can get. And it didn't matter. Like when people are willing to risk it all, they're willing to do, some things that no one else would even dream of trying. So it was a culmination. Like, we talked about my hospitality background, but I went to school for finance. Like I was always in the financial industries. Like I was trading silver, gold, and oil futures in the mid 2000s. Like all my friends were, accountants and finance. They all went and worked at JP Morgan Chase and Discover Card and all of those companies, while I, went and did my own thing. So I was a great operator. So I liked being in that role rather than sitting at a desk, in a cubicle punching numbers all day. And so I got to see the .com, like as I was graduating high school. I saw the .com, bubble. I saw long-term capital management, which was something that happened in 1997 that had contagion for the world financial system. I was right there and saw up close and personal the financial crisis of 2008 and 2009. And so even at that point, like I thought of a system, I would call myself fiscally conservative. And then 2008 and 2009 happened, and trillions of dollars got printed, and they bailed out the banks, and all this stuff happened. I'm like, it's not an if, it's now a when we move on from this system. Like, why be fiscally conservative to something that is going to die eventually?
Yep.
And so, it was all of those things leading up. That's when I found Bitcoin in 2013. I'm like, this makes complete sense. This is a digital version of the asset that I already love, or the asset class, because I was in, gold and silver and platinum.
Absolutely.
And I was like, Bitcoin is just another option. It's another horse in that stable. And now, like, I shouldn't have to pick the winner. I just want to own all of them and just see how it plays out. Obviously, that was the right decision. And so it was like all of those things. And then, 2020 came around, and, everybody had islands of users and liquidity, millions of users and billions in liquidity. There was the island of Ethereum. There was the island of Solana. There was the island of Cardano, Hedera, like everything, all that's happened in between, once Ethereum did their launch, like all the L1s and L2s popped up. And I go back to the traditional stock market. I'm like, that's not how the industry works. That's not how the traditional system works. Like everything is standardized. Liquidity is universal. The users are universal. It doesn't matter what country you grew up in, or, everything. You have access to the world's financial system. And it was like that was the opportunity that I saw. It's like, we don't have to, it's not doing anything out of the, we're not recreating the wheel. We are just decentralizing the traditional system into this new paradigm. And what we need to do is unify the industry that we're now in. And so I pivoted to just straight infrastructure And then, that's when I met my co-founder, Kyle Dolan, and we went out and set out to solve that problem.
Well, I'm super happy to hear this, Ken, just because one, I have been a victim of that amongst many others that have been in crypto. I mean, I think there's a saying out there that if you haven't been hacked once or at least lost your money bridging once, you have not been in crypto at all, right? And that's like your tuition. That's like your tuition fee. It's become so normal. People say that's your tuition fee for being in crypto. And the reality of this whole fact is that it is exactly what scares people to join crypto, right? Because let's face it, let's talk about the problem. Like you said just now, if I am on Ethereum and I want to bridge to Solana, or if I want on Solana, I want to bridge to BNB, you talk about different wallets, talk about gas fees, and then you talk about getting potentially hacked on these bridges. I mean, we see these on headlines all the times that you're being hacked, or rather lost money on your bridging or rather your wallets. So I guess this is a very common problem that we see, and I'm very glad that you're fixing it.
Yeah, we are. The things that the general public fear the most are, their personal health, their family, and their finances. And so you can't have anything that would cause, fear, uncertainty, or doubt, especially in the financial realm, because they're just not going to use it, especially when there's the option of just maintaining in the current system. If it's less scary, even if the opportunity is greater, the risk reward doesn't equate to trying to go and do something new. Even if it does have some better tooling and better optionality, you're going to wait until it is, the coast is clear and you can come in and not lose, all of your hard-earned money. And so we're trying to get there right now.
So for someone that's actually trading but doesn't know the technicalities, what goes behind each buy and sell or each movement of financial systems, what actually happens when a bridge gets hacked? We've heard multiple times like this bridge got hacked, or you've lost your money during that move off one chain to another. What actually goes behind the whole movement?
Got it. Yeah. So I'll use Ethereum and Solana as a good example. So Ethereum is like an apple tree. Solana is an orange tree. Like, you can't grow an orange on an apple tree. You can't grow an apple on an orange tree, right? So if you're trying to swap, you have to, in this world, a bridge is not the apple tree. It's not the orange tree. It's like the intermediary. And so when you're talking about financial assets, Ethereum is very secure. The network, Solana is very secure. Like, those assets, Ethereum and Solana, the networks are not being hacked, right? Like, they're very safe. But in order for you to go from Ethereum to Solana, you have to trust a third party. You have to trust an additional company that doesn't have the security of the two networks. And so it's kind of like almost like pirates, right? Like, if you're trying to go from Europe to the United States back in the day on a ship, and once you're in the Atlantic, like, you're vulnerable, right? And that's essentially what's happening in this world. Like, Europe's secure, the United States is secure, but for you to get from Europe to the United States, like, you have to go through vulnerabilities, which shouldn't be the case at that point. That's why people went away from gold, right? Like, you go away from gold. That's why banks started, so that you could keep the gold in your own country, and then you had this paper note of how much gold you had, and that made it more secure. And then we went to the world where it's now all digital, where it's just numbers on a computer, where you can transfer money from your home, no matter what country you're in, to another person's home, and that makes it even safer. And so what we're trying to do in Web3 is the same thing. Like, we have pirates, and we have a scary ocean that could have, hurricanes. We need to update our infrastructure to remove those risks. And that's what, Wire's, universal transaction layer has went out to solve for. Like, how do we remove and increase the security so that we can transact properly?
I love that analogy, Ken. I love it because the next time anyone talks about this whole bridging case scenarios, I think definitely this analogy, the apple tree and the orange tree, makes the most sense, and of course the pirates and the blue ocean. So,
Yeah.
So Wire's answer is a universal transaction there. And you talk about this abstract ownership, whereby when one asset moves from one chain to another. But in this case scenario, you say that the asset actually never leaves the native chain. So how is that possible? And how do you mean that this asset's actually being traded?
Right. So, I mean, I'll continue with the analogies. You know, if you are, I'm in California, right? Let's say I buy a house in Arizona, which is the state right next door. Like, I don't go with a backhoe and dig up the house and bring it over to California to show that I own it, right? I keep the house there. Like, what lets me show that I have ownership of that house? It's the deed and the title, right? Like, I own this piece of paper, it's registered, and it tells everyone that I own that. It's the same thing for assets on chain. Like, Ethereum is secure, Solana is secure. Like, you should want to keep your asset on Ethereum. You just want to show ownership, that you own those assets, and you might want to do, DeFi transactions, interacting with other assets from other chains. So that's the safest way to do it. Like, I went back to the beginning here where I said Ethereum doesn't get hacked. It doesn't get hacked. So the point is, keep it on Ethereum and then abstract the ownership of that into a universal settlement layer where every user and every asset looks and feels the exact same. And now you can have very fast commerce. And it's not just the universality of it. What we've seen with all the bridge hacks, it is cheaper, it is faster, it's more secure, and it encompasses the entire industry. This isn't like, oh, this interoperability only is for Ethereum or Solana or just EVMs, or that's it. We're talking about every type of blockchain is going to be able to interact with each other in a trustless, decentralized, seamless way.
Beautiful, man. I think Ken, your analogies make it super simple to understand this whole framework, which is exactly what most of us retail investors forget. And perhaps this is why they want to trust you, because that simple analogy being built to actually facilitate that transaction there is super important, right? It's super important. Ken, you also have, apart from the universal layer and the abstract ownership, you also have the UPAP, the Universal Polymorphic Address Protocol. Does that mean now I don't have to write down my 12-word seed phrase and hide it under my mattress so that I never have to forget and access my own funds?
Yeah. So what that means is you have just one address that you need to secure now. So normally, like when we all start out, we normally start out, like, take Bitcoin out of the equation. When we want to start interacting with DeFi, we all started with Ethereum. And so we went and we got an Ethereum wallet. And so that was, it was a private key. It generated us our address, and now we have an Ethereum address. So then, we get more sophisticated. We learn about the industry. Solana comes around, and we're like, okay, like I want to participate in the Solana ecosystem. What do I have to do? Well, your Ethereum wallet, your Ethereum address doesn't mean anything over there. So now you have to go generate a new wallet, which is, Phantom or Soulflare or whatever else is out there that's like Solana based. And it takes a private key and it generates you a new address that's completely not like the Ethereum address. So now you have two addresses, you have two wallets, and it just goes hand in hand. Then you have a Cardano wallet, and then you have, it just continues. And so I have like 9 different wallets, and this literally right now I'm staring at 9 different wallets on my Google, on my Chrome, and it's like, that's not the way that it should be, because now you have to secure everything, right? And there's so many, as you said, like phrases that you have to learn, like and store. Like, what happens with that? So what UPAP is you take one private key and it tells you what the address is on every chain. So now you have one universal address.
I see.
And so from there on out, like, it doesn't matter what kind of blockchain you interact with, it is completely compatible. And that has big ramifications, not just for the user, not just for the human, but for AI and AI agents that are going to be on chain.
That makes a lot of sense. Again, one of the easiest comparable and something that I've recently loved using as well, and has got great product market fit looking at the traction is the FOMO app, right? I'm sure you've obviously maybe used it or not, but the fact that they've just been able to make trading so easy for a lot of these retail traders that are looking to buy crypto or meme coins or AI coins or whatever that looks like. I mean, today you don't even have to think about like the fact of buying a token on Solana, BNB, Ethereum, or Base for that fact. So like that whole roadblock or just being able to kind of like remember different seed phrases, wallet addresses, I think definitely kind of clicks in me like, hey, this is how the future should look like essentially.
There's a nuance there with what we're trying to achieve in Web3. So part of it is the user experience, right? Like the reason that Robinhood is like the number one stock app is because of how easy they made the user experience. Like before Robinhood, there was E-Trade, there was Schwab, there was Fidelity, there was so many trading apps. They had a couple of decades of life before Robinhood came. The reason that Robinhood won is because they created the most seamless user experience in the industry, and retail was able to start an account and start trading, in a few minutes.
Absolutely.
So in Web3, you can make a seamless user experience. Like Binance is a universal exchange. It's just completely centralized. Like, is that what we want? Coinbase is a universal, company. It's just centralized. Like, is that what we want? Or do we want a seamless Web2 like experience with trustless decentralized architecture where you control your funds at all time? That's what I want. And so that was my goal with building Wire. Like there wasn't anything out there that was completely trustless that let me own all of my assets and still do all the DeFi activities that I want to do to generate yield or make, cross-chain transactions.
I love it. You mean that's what we all want, right? My mother today doesn't
That's my bet.
trust.
My bet is that we all actually want that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is like the biggest reason my dad or my mom still has, their assets in my wallet is just because they never want to be able to deal with all these kind of different nuances that you just mentioned, right? But the minute we can get our family members to not have to worry about that and essentially just with the ease of signing up, having that UPAP or, being able to buy their first crypto or store it without having to take any stress, that's when I believe that true innovation and let's say the adoption of crypto will accelerate, in my opinion.
I agree.
And Ken, you know what? You know what's most interesting as I read about Wire? It's not even just the humans that you are targeting. You guys are building for the AI world as well, which is perhaps the most, I'd say, fundamental futuristic way of how things are going to propel, and which is really happening right now, right? Like I think I've seen and I've spoken to so many founders that have built or are building for the AI framework. I want to understand from you, Ken, like this whole network that you're building, this whole foundation and infrastructure from a builder's perspective. What happens to the world when AI starts taking over all our financial decisions and trade, basically not having any human within that loop?
Yeah, well, AI has been a big, obviously, revelation in the middle of our development cycle. So, Wire's been building for 5.5 years. So I think everyone who understands the problem understands that this was the hardest problem in the industry to solve. I think it's the holy grail. Like, who's able to trustlessly unite all these chains? That's one of the biggest wins that you could possibly have. And so, we started doing that in 2020, and we felt that it was going to be a huge innovation just for humans. 2023 comes around and, AI is really picking up, and you start to see that AI agents are going to be a thing. And not only are they going to be a thing, but they're going to come on chain, because just like you want to own and self-custody your own assets, there's reasons that you're going to want to decentralize your AI and have it on chain as well. And so once we realized that and started, it was a question that we asked ourselves, what requirements are these agents going to need in order to do a transaction?
Yep.
And it's slightly different than what a human would be. And it happens to be that Wires UTL, our attributes were built perfectly for what these AI agents are going to, how they're going to decide to do a transaction. And so their requirements are going to be at a high level, like, just for the general retail, person who's listening to this, it's how fast, how cheap, how secure, and how certain that the transaction is going to go through.
Yep.
And so those are things that the AI will be able to weigh and measure and project inside of our universal transaction layer that they can't do in our current fragmented, siloed industry, because there's variable execution rates. Things can get stuck. It's not a binary option where your agent wants to do a transaction and it's either going to complete or return to your wallet. That's how Wire's architecture is built. In the current system, it can get stuck. So you were talking about money being stuck in a bridge. I still have money personally stuck in Wormhole that just never came out. That was years ago.
Yep.
And so you don't want to get into that environment when it comes to your money and when it comes to agents. Going back to the traditional stock market, you have high frequency traders that are machines that are buying and selling stock. You need very cheap, very fast, very secure. You need the same thing over here, where you either want to do a transaction and it either makes it home or it returns back to you. And that's the certainty that Wires UTL will provide these agents. It'll be the natural option for them to pick in the future.
Ken, there was this one instance until date, I still make sure I check every single alphabet and number on that wallet address that I'm bridging or sending funds to. I'll tell you why, because there was this one time I got a message from a friend and he asked me to bridge onto another chain because there was a token that was probably gonna do well, alpha or not. But I bridged in that haste only to realize that I bridged almost 6 figs to the wrong chain. I mean, a wrong wallet address on the wrong chain. Right. So sorry,
Yeah.
It was a right wallet address, but on the wrong chain. So apparently now my funds are just sitting there and I can't retrieve it back anymore. Right. So I'm probably guessing that with this whole infrastructure and everything that you talked about AI, I could probably trust my AI agent to do this way more precise than I would have to do it myself.
100%. Not only trust the AI agent, but also trust the address. So you actually sent it to the right address. It was just on the wrong chain, right?
Wrong chain. Yes.
That's what universal addressing is going to do for you. It's going to help out, because it doesn't matter what chain, if you have the right address and it's yours, it'll make it home. So like, for instance, like you have a universal address, and I have Ethereum and I want to send you $100,000 in ETH on ETH mainnet, right? But for some reason, like, we can't communicate, like, bad cell phone service or whatever, and I need to send you this money. And all I know is your Cardano address. But it's your Cardano address inside of UPAP. So I don't even need to know your Ethereum address. I could send that 100,000 in Ethereum to what I know your Cardano address to be, and it will it'll auto translate and hit your Ethereum wallet, because it's the same thing. So that's a huge problem that's going to be solved in this industry as well.
Ken, can I ask you one question? Sure. Why didn't you build this earlier? This would have saved this would have saved me so much mistakes, and a lot of other people, a lot of multi 6 figs or 7 fig mistakes that they were all faced in this industry.
Yeah. And well, you know what? I don't like to talk bad about bridging. And the reason I don't is because it was the best that we could do technologically at the time. Like, you don't go from cell phone, like landlines to complete cellular or satellite. Like you have to stair step up. And unfortunately, this industry was very young. And so it was the best that we could do. And there was obviously security trade-offs. And it was like, if you really want to, transact across chain, we're going to be able to do that for you, but there's a risk profile, right?
Yep.
And so obviously there's other aspects of the infrastructure. But as time goes on, like I liken it to the early internet. And I talk about this a lot, which is in the very beginning of the internet, if you and I wanted to write an email to each other, we had to do it on the same computer.
Right.
So you would log into the computer, you would type out your email, you would log out, and then I would have to come to that same computer and I would have to log in. It took 10 years for one computer to talk to another, like 10 years of innovation, right? And so that's kind of where we're at. We're at that phase where one computer is finally able to talk to another, but it's not able to talk to a network. And wire network, you're starting to see like where the name's coming from. We're actually able to, take that first innovation and expand upon it and now make it comprehensive, make it universal, make it every type of chain, and create this, financial control plane where you don't have to worry about where the asset came from or where the user came from.
Beautiful. Yeah, I guess like you said, it's also like the natural evolution of innovation over time to be able to comprehend and hold this, I'd say, infrastructure over time as well. And just going back to the AI part, Ken, because as much as you say AI will do a lot of this for us precisely, you've also said, I don't trust AI, right? In the same breath of things, how does one balance the usage of AI in this world?
Yeah, I'm not saying that I won't trust AI more in the future. It's just early, right? So when you're talking about AI agents handling your finances, the day something launches, you don't want to put your entire retirement program, like every bit of money that you've ever earned, into this AI and just hope for the best. Like you want to start small and allow, you gain certainty and confidence over time. And so that's why Ethereum is like everyone trusts it. They trust it because after days, weeks, months, years, there haven't been any vulnerability. There haven't been any hacks, right? Same thing with Bitcoin. That's why people trust the Bitcoin network. You don't trust you take a calculated risk early on, and then after years and a decade goes by, you're like, okay, this is pretty. There's a pretty high confidence that that it's not going to get, there's not an exploit and it's not going to get hacked. And so that's the same thing that you want to do with AI. Like AI and agents are going to have an asymmetric upside for you. So you don't want to not do it, but you definitely want to start out with, give your agent, $100, $1,000, like whatever your risk profile is. Let it build, let time pass, make sure that everything is secure, make sure the coast is clear, right? Like you don't want to lose everything off of a upside gamble. And then, but over time, I think that the entire financial system will be operating, through AI agents and AI in general. We'll get there, but it's going to be a huge multiplier on the amount of on-chain transactions that are happening in this space. Because Sahib, you sleep, right? Like, or there's days that you may be out doing something where you're not at your computer to
Absolutely
to take advantage of maybe there's an arbitrage opportunity, or maybe there's something that's on sale. You're not always there to do that. The AIs will be. So naturally, when you give it the same prompt that you would give yourself, you may say, here's $1,000, like talking to yourself, here's $1,000. So you'd like, go try and generate the most money that you can. Yep. If you give that to your agent, you may do 5 transactions per day. It may do 200.
Right.
Because that's all it's thinking about doing. Yep. And so the amount of on-chain transactions in this industry are about to skyrocket.
That's actually a very, I'd say, again, very good analogy. And of course, what the future kind of looks like as well. And I think a lot of people that are even in crypto perhaps haven't really seen what this is going to translate into. And this is the way you guys have beautifully architected the Wire network to essentially, one, help the retail to onboard themselves into the financial world, and then eventually then break that barrier to let AI then trade for you. It's a journey. I see it as a journey, right? And I think it's amazing. And talking about sleep, Ken, Mainnet summer 2026, you guys have had a beautiful journey thus far. You said 5 years in the making, a community that's super active and watching you guys closely. I think what, a team of close to 50 people now. What keeps you awake at night? What is that sort of excitement between, Wire today and that mass adoption?
Yeah, I mean, it has been a journey. It's been over 5 years between equity and selling some of the node, some of the architecture, the network itself. Like we've raised $20 million. So this isn't small potatoes. We have so many partners, and so what's right now from a technology perspective, like we've done it. Now that we're in launch phase, it is just getting everything. There's so many ancillary things that go into a launch. There's exchanges, there's market makers, there's partnerships, like getting them all lined up. There's liquidity. There's so many things that go into launching a technology beyond the technology. And so that's where we're at right now. That's where I'm lacking sleep, is getting all of those lined up so that I can hit the button and push this network out and change the industry. I truly think that what we've developed is one of the most consequential pieces of technology that this industry has seen in many years. I think very few times something comes out that really changes the game. I think this really changes the game.
This is the only thing that AI cannot do for you just yet, right? All these partnerships, all these showing up, and all these hunting for liquidity, talking to market makers and stuff, leading a team, for instance. And I guess this is where your blue collar CEO operator comes into play as well, right?
Yeah, the operations is, I've been there. It's been a different industry, but it translates. And the other thing that AI can't do is build a system and a protocol like what we've built. Like there's so much nuance, the way the technology is layered in. There's so many decisions that gets made along the way. That's our technological moat. Like this can't be recreated.
Ken, for any developer that's watching this and has perhaps built on different chains, been burned trying to build the app for those different chains, like what would your pitch be to these guys to perhaps how they should be leveraging and looking at Wire Network?
You're going to love us. It's reverse compatible. So anything that you've already built right now, it doesn't matter what chain it's on. We're new piping that you'll be able to integrate in to what you currently built that will just give you access. So one implementation that gives you access to every chain, every user, all the liquidity on those different chains. So this isn't like you have to come build on Wire. We're not creating another walled garden where it's like you have to use Wire and do all these contracts with us. We're literally chain agnostic infrastructure. I don't care who wins. It doesn't, like, I want everybody to win and every chain, you know what I mean? Like, and so we build it for that. So it's reverse compatible, it's universal. And now, so if you have built a marketplace, if you have built a DeFi product, if you have built a DEX, you now you can make it a universal marketplace. You can make it a universal DEX. You can make it a universal DeFi product. And so once you break down the barriers, once you smooth that out, then everyone competes at the product level. It used to be the chain wars, right? Like, oh, if you don't build on Ethereum, you're dead. You'll never make it. Or then, Solana like kind of showed that wasn't the case. And then there's other chains that, aren't doing so well. But once you make everything standardized, product wins. So you don't have to worry, there's no more chain wars. It's above that now. It is whoever can build the most seamless user experience that drives users in is going to win the game.
Very well said, actually, Ken, because I kind of absolutely agree there, because today there are a lot of developers that are like, oh, I'm pro Solana, I'm pro Ethereum, I'm pro one chain. But the truth is, like, you shouldn't be building based on the chain that you prefer, but you should be building based on what the user wants, and then reverse engineer and see which chain actually solves that problem. And what you guys are actually being able to do is solve that entire universal layer to connect that whole infrastructure to provide that seamless experience to the end user.
Yeah. And from a developer standpoint, this is another thing that they're going to love. Like right now, you have to pick a chain to develop. You kind of talked about it.
Yep.
But everyone's thinking inside of that box right now.
Mm.
The new box, the outside of that box is you can actually develop a product that uses the best of Solana. Like maybe there's something in Solana's architecture that you want to use. Maybe there's something on Ethereum's architecture that you want to use, or Cardano. Like you can have assets on those chains for specific reasons, whether it's gaming or DeFi or whatever reason. Like everyone has a different business model.
Yep.
The point is it will all aggregate up into Wire's universal transaction layer in our architecture, where you can have assets from all types of chains in a unified experience for your user base. And so once people start thinking about that, then they don't have to pick a chain anymore. It's going to be like a buffet. I like a little of this, I like a little of that, and then my final product's going to be, much more efficient and much more enjoyable for the user, and probably more profitable for the company itself.
Very well said again, Ken. Your analogies and comparisons are just perfect for any translation. Buffet, all you can eat, all you can build. Come to Wire, use all the best technologies and chains, but this is where we stitch it all for you.
Yep.
Ken, you have been in crypto since 2013. You are a hardcore operator. You are now on the horse stack yourself building. What would you say or advise a new founder looking to build something in the space today? What is it that they could learn from your mistake?
I wouldn't say I had a mistake. I think I did it the right way. What I would tell them is don't listen to the narrative. And when you want to solve something, solve it for the future, no matter if that means that you have to go against the grain. Like when we started building, everyone was investors, like a lot of people, advisors were telling us just, build something for Ethereum or build something that had, because the reason it took 5.5 years is because it is completely trustless, completely decentralized. If we wanted to build this is why bridging is a thing, because we could build a bridge in a couple of months with my team. Like it's not difficult, and the reason it's not difficult is because you just centralize the hard parts.
Mm-hmm.
Like
right.
It's like I'm going to have this mostly decentralized platform, but the part that actually matters, that's the hardest part to solve. That's like the holy grail. That's like how the cure for cancer. I can't do that, so I'll just centralize it and make it easy. And that happens to be the vulnerability, right, at the same time.
Right.
And so what I'll tell somebody is go all the way, even if it takes longer, because now that we've solved interoperability in a trustless, decentralized way and made it universal, there really isn't a better way to like leapfrog us. Like you want to build your moat where you've built the best technology that can't be leapfrogged. The fact is, like, Ethereum is a certain architecture, Solana is a certain architecture, Cardano is a certain architecture. They're never going to change. And so there is only certain ways to to make those interact properly. And we're the first ones that have done it like in what I feel is a true Web3 way, which is completely trustless, where everyone can own their assets. And so I would say pick the next thing, because there's so many things out there that need to be solved for and solved for properly. Think about what the future, like who's going to win, what does that look like, and then reverse engineer how to develop that.
I love it, Ken. Love it. Don't chase a hot potato. Look for the future. Reverse engineer it. And these things never take a short time. It takes a long time, guys. This is Ken actually building for the past 5 years. You can see how he's perhaps speaking about it today and makes it look all easy, that it's all connected and stitched. But this is a 5 years in the journey, and of course longer in the space, and being a veteran to understand what is needed and how it's supposed to be done. Talking about narratives, Ken, a quick rapid fire for you. So just a very short answer, and then we can move on from there. Ready?
Mhm.
Most overrated narrative in crypto.
Wow, you went big off the jump. The biggest narrative. Um,
Our most overrated trend in crypto.
so there's so many. There's so many. I would say the biggest one that was out there was that the we are all Ethereum L2 narrative, that you just created an L2 that didn't really have an interaction with the L1, but it was like we are Ethereum, and that was never the case. That was a lie and a narrative that was sold to extract money, and it worked for a very long time until Vitalik. It was kind of like he was the little boy that looked at the emperor and told him that he told everyone that he had no clothes. Everyone knew, but they didn't want to say anything. And then finally Vitalik said, you are not all Ethereum. And then finally we could, the industry could move forward. I think that was the biggest narrative for multi-years that finally got extinguished and needed to.
Open source or closed source AI?
Open source by far. And I'll tell you why. Closed source will always, they're going to turn it into an iPhone. I talked about this many years ago, like 2023, 2024. I said, closed source is going to win in the beginning, but eventually they're going to turn it into the iPhone, where they're going to have the bigger, more advanced models, but they won't release them to the public. They'll release like a version, like if we're out here on the edge of technology, they'll come back here and they'll give you like a little bit better camera, a little bit better battery life, right? Like they'll iPhone it so they can generate revenue, because that's what the business model is. The open source community always starts behind, but the open source community puts out product at the pace of innovation. So they're always putting out the best product because they want to win. And so eventually what's going to happen is the open source AI is going to surpass the closed source models, because not only will the closed source models gatekeep or limit, then they'll do what they're doing now, which I called many years ago, which is they'll say, okay, this model's too powerful for the general public. Now it's too powerful for a company. Now only the Department of Defense can use this because it's so powerful. And then, or they'll go the other route, which is like, if you want to use this, it's going to cost you $2 million a month because it's too powerful. Like they're going to go that direction. The open source community will always surpass and win out in the end. So that is a future that I'm also betting on.
One book or philosophy that completely changed the way you run a business?
I wouldn't say it was a book. I'd say the philosophy is how I learned how to operate was watching other companies and operators who did things wrong. And I promised myself I would never be that way or operate that way or make that mistake. So it was more a series of making myself not want to step in it or have failures. So it wasn't more about being very innovative in the beginning. It was more about like not messing up or doing things in that direction. And then after a while, once you get the mess ups out of the way, you remove that aspect, then you can start calculating and taking calculated risks and calculated gambles that could potentially make things better for you. But in the beginning, you just don't want to mess up.
Wow, Ken, I would actually be very keen for you to actually compile those lists someday whenever you're free, because I definitely want to learn from all of those observations that you have seen and perhaps promise yourself not to do.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
there's a lot.
I'll say this, Ken. You have been a massive inspiration, and of course, I've learned a lot today, and I'm sure a lot of our friends here watching the show here would have also learned a lot. Guys, ladies and gentlemen, I will say this, friends, that this is massive to see the success that they have been doing so far, and I think this is just the beginning of the journey of what we will see coming from Wire Network. This is 5 years in the making, as it looks like they've just been around and seeing that sort of translate into the product that they built today. But this is 5 years in the making, and they are not going to stop. because Ken has that deadly combo of being an operator, a visionary, and of course, a pioneer in these groundbreaking technologies and innovation. Ken, where can people find you and follow your progress of where things are moving with Wire Network?
A few things. So for me personally, I'm on X at Ken DeCross. Our X company account is Wire Network. The website is wire.network, and there you can actually participate. So even before we launch, which will be here summer, early fall, you can gain access to the token. And so if you go to wire.network, you can use Ethereum, Solana, crypto assets, and you can gain access to the token, which will be used for that universal compute in the future. It's going to have the highest utility in the space.
I totally believe you, and we'll look forward to that. Ken, I myself will be looking for that link today. And friends, I'll make sure to drop the link here below for you guys as well. So whether you are a retail in the space, a lurker, a builder, or a developer, guys, you have to go and check out wire.network. Please eventually do let us know how you found this episode. But until then, guys, cheers, and we look forward to bringing you more guests like Ken. Thank you so much, Ken, for coming on the Base Show.
Appreciate it so much. Thank you.